How do batteries work? How can we make better chemical catalysts for creating new drugs? What enables animals to live in extremely cold environments without freezing solid? These are all important questions, but they don't seem to have much in common with one another. Yet they do have. They are all concerned in one way or another with the question of how the molecules of a solvent interact with the molecules they dissolve, or with the surfaces with which they come into contact. The molecular scale details of these interactions in the phenomenon that we call solvation science still aren't very well understood. If you think that seems surprising, you're right. Many, perhaps most chemical reactions take place in a solvent. And in many of the examples that we're familiar with, that solvent is water. Most people have had the experience of mixing two solutions together in school chemistry. And maybe you remember seeing the liquids change colour or get warm and bubble as a reaction takes place. The chemical ingredients in those solutions will have been surrounded by molecules of the solvent, in this case water. That's why they dissolved in the first place. Solvation affects the way sugar dissolves in your coffee, or why your car goes rusty. It influences most of the chemical processes going on inside the cells of your body, which keep you alive and healthy. So solvation is all around us and inside us, and yet there are still many mysteries about what it is and how it happens. The international initiative called RESOLV, based at the University of Bochum in Germany, has been created to examine some of those mysteries. It aims to establish nothing less than a new scientific discipline called Solvation science. The insights that RESOLV hopes to gain might have applications in areas as diverse as corrosion, molecular biology, and environmentally friendly industrial chemical processing. Solvation science can develop only through the collaboration of many different disciplines. It means investigating the inner workings of living cells, as well as solving problems of, say, the production of energy, materials, and chemicals without pollution. It challenges not only the way we conventionally divide up the sciences, but also the traditional division between pure and applied science, between academic research and industrial practice. It's an ambitious aim, but speaking as a science writer and a former editor of the science journal Nature, I think that it's well worth the effort. How substances behave in solvents is an ancient problem, which crops up in practical crafts such as painting, soap making, and metallurgy. It hasn't been totally overlooked by chemists. In the early 20th century, theories were developed to explain how simple dissolved particles such as ions, atoms and small molecules with an electrical charge like the sodium and chloride ions in ordinary salt, how they become surrounded by water molecules in very diluted solutions. But it's never been clear how well these theories can account for what goes on inside living cells, say, where there are many different kinds of molecules all packed closely together, or close to surfaces, as when seawater corrodes ships and bridges. We still don't have a very good understanding of fundamental questions, such as how the arrangement of solvent molecules changes when two dissolved chemical compounds react with one another, or what effect those changes might have on the reactions themselves. Often, getting a chemical reaction to work at all may depend on finding the right solvent, but this is an imperfect art which relies largely on rules of thumb, intuition and trial and error, not rational theory. These questions about solvation are complicated, and part of the reason why they've been rather neglected is that no one had either experimental or theoretical tools to investigate them closely. But now we do. Computer simulations in which researchers use simplified descriptions of molecules and the forces between them to watch how molecules move and organise themselves at the molecular level, are now sophisticated enough to offer a detailed picture of things we can't see directly, as in this example where we can see the motions of water molecules and hydrogen ions close to a platinum electrode. Some of these molecular systems can be simulated right down to the level of calculating how individual subatomic particles, such as electrons, move and interact according to the laws of quantum theory. Meanwhile, there are now experimental techniques that can reveal the dance of atoms and molecules in stop-frame movies of less than a trillionth of a second per frame. Today we have the techniques to watch solvation processes as they happen. One area where this is particularly important is in biochemistry. We now know that changes in the arrangements or the movements of water molecules surrounding or penetrating into proteins, DNA and cell membranes can have a crucial influence on how they act on each other or on how drug molecules will affect their behaviour. Drug designers are increasingly having to take into account not just the shapes and motions of drugs and their targets, but also of the water molecules that get shifted about when a drug binds. We also know that the shell of water around a protein molecule has a role in enabling it to fold up into the very specific shape that lets it do its biological job. Water might be crucial to the way some proteins can misfold, a process involved in neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's. The solvation of ions, meanwhile, is central to processes of corrosion, the natural cycles of chemical elements, battery technology, desalination of seawater, and nerve signalling, to mention just a few examples. And the development of new solvents to replace the toxic or carcinogenic ones commonly found in the chemicals industry today, a topic called green chemistry, could make the industry cleaner and safer. These are some of the key objectives of the RESOLV programme and of the new interdisciplinary field called Solvation science that it aims to establish.